will be picked up. So let me just make sure I've got the. Here we go.
It's a good topic. It's really interesting.
Are you using this one?
No, that's that you can put off.
But you have a way of bringing the slides on that screen.
Yeah, that's fine. So wait.
He came very equipped with his own, even his own broadcasting gear. And got off the train at Skoyen and cycled over.
Right.
Right. So
Do you expect some more, is it? From our group?
And then, I think one or two people back.
well,
Larry, you done a bit. Jonathan's Vortex.
Shall I post it on social medias?
yeah, happy to post on social media. Wait, so you've got the direct link to the live now.
Yeah,
Should
yeah.
be on
Well,
the
there's
right.
some people, train travelers, aren't they?
See, I'll post to you as a direct message the link to the stream. So make of that what you will.
Yeah.
So right.
So there's a train spotter.
Train spotter.
I have just train spotting purposes.
All right.
Right then.
Would you like an introduction, or are you happy to?
Yeah, wait. You just, for the sake of your colleagues, explain how this came about, and then and then I can launch into it basically.
And this is being streamed live.
This is being streamed, yeah. So basically, the presentation will be streamed, and when we come to the discussion, we'll stop the stream for if we then need to say something that's like off the record or something. And if you're watching on the stream, people, please post me questions on social media, and I'll be very happy to answer them. So that's basically the rule and the deal. But from now on, anything that's said in the room will be picked up by the camera and recorded. So maybe for a short while, sort of reduce the gossip.
John Wirth is a well-known campaigner for cross-border travel by rail in Europe. He also has a very popular political blog on Europe, and is also a bit of an online media phenomenon. So he's very active in getting word out about things, and I think that you're on an elaborate tour, which you do only using service transport, collective and active transport with your fold-up bike on trains, and finding out how some of these infrastructures could work better together and could work better in general. And I thought it would be excellent to go into the summer rhythm here on that note. And you were kind enough to agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Right. Well, thank you. This is a picture from earlier in the week at Riksgrensen, most northerly cross-border railway line. Getting there was one of my missing international railway lines I haven't been to so far. I think the important point here from the slide, the materials and everything that I'm presenting is a Creative Commons licensed, including all of the photos, so you can download all of those materials at the link there. Anyway, what's the whole deal and what am I trying to do? I'm a European Union political communications specialist by background. I'm not really a railway person. But out of political conviction, I tried to avoid flying for the sake of all of my business trips. Until last year I was based in Berlin, now I'm based in a village in rural France. And I try to avoid flying for all of my work. And then, as many of us, I had time on my hands during the COVID lockdown, and at that time stumbled across an old report from the European Parliament from the year 2015 called Missing Links, that said here are 15 places all around Europe where with a little bit of money we could fix the international railways. And in 2021 I then asked myself the question, what happened in the 6 years in between? And the answer was in only one of the 15 places had there been any progress. They repaired 2 kilometers of line at the border of Germany to Czechia. And I then posted about this situation on my blog and on social media, and all of my followers then said, hey, there's another place, there's a problem here, there's something you should go, and there's a problem here. So basically, actually, it's not just 15 problems, we've got dozens of problems of all of this all over Europe. And so ultimately, I started to then ask myself, well, what's going on here, and what are kind of fundamentals of this sort of problem? Basically, national rail systems in Europe work comparatively well, or they definitely work better than international rail systems in Europe. But once you cross a border, everything gets more complicated. The infrastructure is often of a less good quality on the cross-border section, and the level of service, timetables, tickets, even getting tickets for the trains can often be of poor quality. Technical hurdles can complicate the operations. Some places at borders, literally there is a different technical standard on the other side of the border. Now, one of the things I've learned from railways is many railway industries can always find a technical reason for not acting, right? You want to find a reason why your train can't run to Sweden? I can find you one right now. If you want to find a solution to that, then we can probably overcome it as well. Now, what I've learned from the project as well is that because, well, first of all, these problems are cross-border, so we probably need European Union action in order to manage to fix them. And the problems are pretty much universal all over Europe. These problems go from the north of Finland to the north of Sweden to the border of Portugal to Spain, right? In terms of the difficulties, they are pretty much universal. So, what I also have with me is a drone for aerial photography when I'm on the go, and this picture probably is kind of the picture of the project so far. This is the border bridge between Zgorzelec in Poland here at the top, Görlitz in Germany at the bottom, and you can see on the screen here, this is the Neisse River that forms the border between Germany and Poland. And you see, if you look carefully, the electrification masts on the railway line end in the middle of the bridge. There has been a 2003 agreement between Germany and Poland to electrify the entire corridor from the Polish city of Wrocław to Dresden. Poland completed its job by 2015. It still took them 12 years to get their bit done, right? But Germany hasn't begun. And so they basically said, we're going to build the electrification masts right into the middle of the bridge. It's kind of a provocation to the German side and say, hey, get on with it. Now, you might be smiling around the table that Norway has one like this. They've been waiting to electrify the line between Trondheim and Storlien for more than a century. And so therefore, that will finally get done while the Swedes have electrified their side. It's just not quite such a nice picture at the border of that one. Anyway, so what was then cross-border rail, this project that I'm doing? It started in 2022 to cross all of the internal borders of the European Union that you can cross by train in one journey, right? Which was a slightly crazy trip. I didn't go to every line, but basically the principle was any border where there was at least one railway line, I went there at least once, right? That's what I tried to do at the beginning, to try to highlight the problems and propose solutions. Where there are no trains anymore, I take a folding bike with me so I can cross the border. That also allows me to better investigate the infrastructure on the ground if I take the folding bike with me. I'm doing that tomorrow at Magnor to Charlottenberg, so I'm just past Kongsvinger on the border to Sweden. I did a smaller follow-up project in 2023 and 2024 focusing on Germany, non-EU, Southeastern Europe. And now this is the last summer of these big tours, simply because there aren't many more borders to go to. I first focused actually on the Channel Tunnel this spring, and now I'm focusing mostly this summer on the European Union's eastern borders, with a little bit of a diversion to Norway and Sweden to tick off the final two borders here in the north that I'm missing. And so far in the project, that is a railway border, by the way. This is Czechia, and that's Poland, and you see the material of the sleepers changes at the border. So far, it's 309 borders and a lot of trains. That's the data correct as of today that I've been through so far. And because I come from a family of geography teachers and like mapping, I've mapped all of Europe's railway borders and listed all of them that I need to go to. The pink ones are places I've been to already, but you see there are a lot of grey pins over in Central and Eastern Europe, and those are going to be the focus of my work this summer. The aim here with the mapping is if it has an icon with a train and a track, that means it's actually a proper active borderline. You see here, I can't immediately spot one here, for example. This means there are no trains running, but there is a track there, and if the track has a cross on it, that means the railway line has been dismantled, and the question could then be whether you could reactivate it or not. So I've basically taken a lot of open data and turned that into a kind of the most comprehensive mapping effort of cross-border railway lines that you can do. Now, in total on that map, by the way, about 495 border lines. So I'm still quite a long way away from hitting all 495, but more than 100 of them have been dismantled and are probably not going to be practically ever going to be reopened again in the future. Anyway, this is nice little picture with the drone at the border here of Croatia to Slovenia. The railway line between Butnjaci and Metlika closed at the beginning of the COVID pandemic. They never reopened it afterwards, and they just put a barbed wire fence across the track there to stop pedestrians walking across the bridge. What are the specific issues? So now I'm trying to kind of do the politics of this, right? So breaking this down into what are the specific problems and specific borders, and what would you do about trying to solve them? There are 4 categories. Some cross-border tracks have fallen into disrepair. Could you rebuild them? Right. Other places, tracks exist but passenger trains don't run. So that might mean there are either freight trains that are running, or in some cases, although it sounds absurd, you have a legally active railway line with no trains running on it. Right? I've discovered a few of those. In other places, trains run, but the timetables are so poor that no one can use them, or fewer people use them than would be the case otherwise. Or informational ticketing problems make things complicated across the border. Right? So I'm going to tell one story from each of those 4 categories to explain them. So the first story, we are at the border of France to Belgium, between the cities of Valenciennes, former industrial town on the French side, and Mons in Wallonia. The red lines on the map here are where I went in my project. And if we zoom in here on the border, here we have an active railway line which actually serves, works here, which actually makes trains. The purple line here is the border, the dotted line is the part of the track which is missing, and then in Quievrain here on the Belgian side, you pick up a train again. So you have 2 kilometers of missing track in the border section. If you photograph it with a drone, literally the border is here, and you can just about make out a bit of track here. So indeed, it's basically nothing's running, but even the tracks are actually still literally laid there, but nothing's been running on those tracks for 30 odd years. When you finally then get to the Belgian side, you see it's in semi-reasonable condition, electrified. There's a regional train that goes on there onwards towards Brussels. Now, the ridiculous thing here is the European Union has an agency for railways, and it's based in Valenciennes. So the civil servants that work at the EU Agency for Railways have no direct train to take them to Brussels. They have to go either on a crazy loop around via Lille one way, or round via Charleroi on the other side, or what most of them do is drive to Quievrain and then take the train from there. Now, it makes a funny story, but the EU Agency for Railways, in comparison to equivalent bodies for air, for example, is considerably under-resourced. And so therefore, they're actually doing the best job they legitimately can with considerably restricted resources, but they need to be supported, not criticised ultimately in what they're trying to do there. They've been among the biggest allies for the work that I've been doing, being the staff that work there. But overall, these types of cases, if a line has fallen into disrepair, getting it reactivated is normally a very, very hard job. Some of the ones have some big political attention to them. For example, there's a very famous one between Freiburg in Germany and Colmar in France. The bridge over the Rhine was destroyed at the end of World War II, and it's a very, very complicated bridge to rebuild because the Rhine is so wide at that point. Right? So often there are reasons, maybe not justifiable reasons, but at least some reasons why those lines closed, and therefore it's hard and financially hard in order to manage to put that right. So in all my work, I've got 3 or 4 of these where you could reconstruct a few kilometers of track and say, okay, with tens of millions of euros, you could put the problem right. Right? So that's my hardest category. The second then is, what do you do about if you have an active track, but you have no trains running on it, right? So that ought to be easier, right? So we are now at the border of Lithuania to Latvia, next to the second city of Latvia, Daugavpils. And the pink lines here are trains, and the black line there at the border is the cycling route I had to take between the two towns to the village of Turmantas, 206 people living in Turmantas, and Daugavpils has 80,000. Right? Now, so here we are. Here is the active railway line. I'm there on my bicycle. Here is the railway station of Turmantas, with the train there waiting, ready to go to Vilnius. So there are 5 trains a day from Turmantas to Vilnius. there are no trains each day from Tuomantas to Daugavpils, despite the track existing, the train existing, and the train even having the permission to run as far as Daugavpils. Why? Because of a dispute about subsidies. And it's because, as you can see, there's no overhead wires here, it's a diesel train. Someone has to subsidise the litres of diesel fuel to run the train. It's a Lithuanian train, and the Latvian side says we don't want to subsidise the diesel fuel to run the train. Now, when I was there on my bicycle on the dirt road, I got overtaken by a bus. There were passengers who got out of the bus and walked across the border to take the train. Right? Now, if you have people who are willing to take a bus on a dirt road and walk across the border to take the train, I reckon you've got a bit of a demand to actually offer a train. Right? Now, eventually this one may, by the end of this year, finally be solved, because the mayor of Daugavpils, just annoyed by the lack of activity from the Latvian national government, has said, well, maybe the city of Daugavpils needs to step in here and manage to sort out the subsidy. But there was a serious problem here that often, if you don't have a collaborative political arrangement between the politicians on both sides of the border, you end up with absurd problems like this, which actually remain unsolved. The only Nordic case I've got, but doesn't apply directly to Norway, I'm afraid, so far in my project, is actually at the Sweden-Finland border at the very top of the Baltic, Haparanda to Tornio. So you have and here you do have a technical problem, right? You have the different gauges of the lines. So you have the standard gauge line here to Haparanda on the Swedish side. You have a broad gauge line, but where the passenger trains start here in Tornio and go on towards Kemi and eventually onwards towards Oulu. And there is a railway bridge here at the border section, right? But at the moment there are no passenger trains crossing it, right? So it's quite an amazing place, historical old station. Amazing old with the church on the hill and nice old railway bridge. You see also they even have dual gauge tracks laid on the bridge there. And indeed it was historic because at some point Lenin fled through here. Quite an amazing little spot. Now, what subsequently happened is the Finnish government has found money to renovate the bridge, but it hasn't found money to run the service. So at the moment, we now have infrastructure. Since I took this picture in 2022, there are now overhead wires on this bridge, but no one is actually running any train. Right? So ultimately, the infrastructure is there and is ready to go, but no one has actually, because basically not many people live in that part of Sweden and Norway to subsidise the service. So this is one on my hit list, is basically to say, I don't know how many trains you could run here, but some, probably 3 or 4 trains a day, and potentially even run a Haparanda to Stockholm night train. So connecting Oulu and Rovaniemi in northern Finland through to Stockholm with a night train would make a lot of sense. But at the moment, due again to a problem of lack of public subsidy, it's not being done. Right, but let's find a more positive case. So back to the Baltic states, this time further north, between Riga and Tallinn. Before, if you wanted to cross that border, you had to go through and change trains in Valga, the border town. Nice modern train in a neatly renovated railway station, not electrified, but anyway, but everything's neat. They were doing some Ukrainian solidarity the last time I was there, and there's a slightly older train on the Latvian side, but everything is in a good condition. The problem was that if you were departing southbound, these timetables were, Tallinn, Tartu Valga, the train arrives at 11:02. The problem is that next onward train was 14:52. Right? So you basically have no option other than to be stuck for 3.5 hours in Valga at the border if you wanted to try to make this trip. Whereas the next train arrives at 16:40, so it arrived too late for the connecting service. So this was a bit of a ridiculous circumstance. Now, ultimately, this is one that since January this year, and together with a bunch of other activists, I helped play a role in getting this one fixed. Now, what happened was the Lithuanians had you say, hang on a minute, we're just the Latvia-Estonia border, but the Lithuanians had a spare train. And they decided last summer, why don't we run it from Vilnius to Riga once a day? Because we've got a spare train, right? Let's see if anyone will take a train between Vilnius and Riga. And the answer was, it was a runaway success and the train was booked up every day. So what they've now done is extended it. So actually, it says in the timetable you're running Vilnius to Tallinn. You do actually still have to change trains in Valga, but it's a guaranteed connection. And now, 7:05 in the morning, arrive 17:34 in the afternoon, and go the whole way through from Vilnius via Valga and onwards to Tallinn. What happened here? You have basically a railway company that was operationally semi-capable, LTG in Lithuania, a little bit of political will from the government of Latvia, you lined up all the dominoes in a row, and now you can take the train through the day to get through the 3 Baltic states. The train time is more or less exactly the same as if you take the bus, but it's much more comfortable, and having taken the same type of train, it actually has a nice little cafe on board, you can watch the world go by, and it's definitely much, much more preferable than taking a long-distance bus on this route. So basically, build it and they will come, essentially, is from this case, and just basically very simple measures, you can essentially say, okay, we can improve a connection like that quite a lot. And then last but not least, what are information and ticketing problems? We're now at the France-Italy border, just north of Nice here, on these borderlines that go into the mountains just north of Nice, particularly focusing on the town of Rai-sur-Roya, so the little regional centre there. So you see here, that line going north goes to Italy, this line going south goes to Italy, and that line there is the only line, despite it being a French town, it has only 1 railway line to France, but 2 railway lines to Italy. In the railway station there are Italian trains, and there are French trains. And hanging in the ticket office there is this sign, tickets for Italy. At the moment, it's no longer possible to buy any train tickets to Italy. Yeah? To buy your tickets, go to the website of the Italian railways. Right? Now, I went and asked at the ticket office, so why are you not selling tickets to Italy? And the guy goes, privatisation. Privatisation, right? It's a state-owned railway company on both sides of the border. They just don't get along with each other, right? Now, privatisation, of course, it's not the reason, right? Now, but what you essentially have here, and there is a very, very important point, I think we'll kind of conclude on this, is railway companies, even the state-owned ones, don't necessarily want to collaborate or share data with each other, because they fear the consequences of if they were to share the data with each other, they might have to share their data with private rivals. Right? So in Germany, for example, Deutsche Bahn is the state-owned operator, is very nervous about sharing data with, say, the French national railways, because it definitely doesn't want to share data with Flixtrain, its private rival on the German network. Right? Now, if you have to share with someone else, that might mean also having to share the data with private rivals. Now, at least Norway, with the Entura system, has at least partly put those data sharing problems right. Yeah? Now, and it's one thing that we can probably have a discussion later about. There should be a European Union reform of the data exchange regime for ticketing. A regulation should be proposed by the end of this year. Anyway. So again, this one is very simple and quick and easy to solve, with a little bit of will to make sure that Train Italia can sell SNCF tickets and vice versa. And indeed, because all of these trains are publicly subsidised, and indeed you can even take an Italian train between 2 French stations, right? This better borders, right? For example, Germany and Czechia, they've got exactly this problem completely fixed, right? Whereas at some other borders, like France and Italy, it's still completely broken. So, that is all for my initial round of introduction. We see here another railway border here, Poland, Germany. You can see exactly there is where the border is, where the quality of the sleepers are changing. And last but not least, I didn't say that at the beginning, my projects are crowd-funded by the readers of my blog. That means I'm independent of all governmental bodies and all railway companies. And that's quite important to then basically make sure that I maintain my independence of the work that I'm doing. So that's that for my round of kind of quick introductory remarks about what I'm doing and what I'm working on. So for those of you in the stream, I will stop the stream now, and if you have any questions, please pose them to me either on social media or on by email happily. There is also a social event in Oslo coming up at 3 o'clock this afternoon if people want to pose me questions there. But otherwise, I'm going to come and stop the stream and then we'll have a discussion around the table at the event here. Right, let's stop that. Oops. So, end.